I know. It's hard to believe you're in the same room with me. Happy Wednesday, everyone. President Trump has given orders to obliterate Iran if the regime assassinates him. Big deal. I get obliterated every night, said one woman. President Trump also suggested taking over Gaza. His first project, opening a gentleman's club called the Gaza Strip. Why not? Democrats have already filed new impeachment articles against Trump over his proposed plan in Gaza. Well, there goes their free lap dances at the Gaza Strip. President Trump's proposed budget bill will feature roughly $1 trillion worth of spending cuts. But this is nice. He's leaving in a few extra bucks to buy some clothes for Kanye's wife. Please don't. The U.S. Navy has unveiled a photo of a warship firing a high-powered laser weapon. Its first target, removing Rashida Tlaib's mustache. In Iran, a naked woman jumped on a police car to protest the country's treatment of women. In a related story, guess who just moved to Iran? Jump on me. Walmart has announced plans to cut hundreds of jobs. If you do the math, this will be the second time in a year Jim Acosta is out of work. Randy Weingarten, the teachers union boss who makes over $500,000 a year, is worried Trump will cut her salary, forcing her to return to her old line of work. I don't know if that's a real photo. Trump is publicly considering exporting American criminals to foreign jails. It sounds cruel, but it's part of a bigger effort to keep Hillary Clinton from murdering them. And according to a new study, apes may be able to read minds just like humans. Even more impressive, some apes are actually able to host a nightly cable news show. Yeah. All right. Since returning to office, President Trump's been signing executive orders faster than Larry Kudlow signing boobs at the Villages. Trump is like that U.S. Army slogan from the 80s, "We do more before 9 a.m. than you do all day." Only with him, he sets the alarm even earlier. And he set his sights on the Middle East. I wonder, will the U.S. take over the Gaza Strip and do a good job with it, too?
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site, and get rid of the destroyed buildings, do a real job, do something different. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
The Riviera of the Middle East, huh? Ooh. I only hope the Cabana Boys get new pagers. But maybe to Trump, Gaza is a construction project. And he thought, hey, if I can deal with the mafia and NYC, I can handle Hamas. They both kill people and demand money. But also during that same press conference on Gaza, he dropped this instant classic.
Do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan Suffolk woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from?
Afghanistan.
Oh. Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying.
That's why he's the guy. That's not really Trump's fault. Her accent was thicker than AOC's skull. But if the Gaza plan sounds crazy, that's the point. It's what you call a dad move. You know, you're in a huge fight with your sister over the remote. Dad comes down and takes the remote away. Suddenly, you and sis have a common enemy, dad, which forces the brats to come up with a creative alternative like sharing the remote. In this case, the brats are Egypt and Jordan. They're the siblings, and now they're gonna have to share the burden, or dad's gonna make life hell. And if you want hell, listen to what Trump has instructed America to do if Iran took him out.
If they did that, they would be obliterated. That'd be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left.
Not a bad plan. You know, I also left instructions in case I'm assassinated. That my ashes are to be spread on top of Kilmeade's lunch. Look, the point is, Trump doesn't just think outside the box. He leaves the box on the curb for Don Lemon to sleep in. And because everything follows a simple principle. America first, no bluffs given. It all makes sense, and there's less wiggle room than Joy Behar Spanx. Compare that to the old administration, an activist wish list far removed from Americans' real concerns. Trans issues, sanctuary cities, social justice movements, accidental bowel movements. It all translated to America last. So now Trump's crushing it. On Tuesday, the CIA offered buyouts to its entire workforce, which he'd just done to millions of federal workers. The upside, their disguise skills will come in handy if you don't want people to know you work for Uber. Trump also signed an executive order defunding the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Next time they want to house hostages, try Motel 6. Yeah. And he's also withdrawing the U.S. from the UN Human Rights Council. Who's on that council? Well, Burundi, China, Somalia, Sudan. Having those countries on a council on human rights is like having J.B. Pritzker on the board at Weight Watchers. Yeah. Trump also signed another order banning men from women's sports. And some of the trans women athletes, they're not taking the news very well.
You better do it! You want to be mad, you're a silly man now.
His next executive action might be to get rid of the Department of Education, shutting down functions that aren't written explicitly into statutes, meaning if it's not in the law, it's not legal. No wonder the Democrats are panicking like Jerry Nadler just used their only bathroom. Since the Education Department's inception, reading and math scores have been dropping faster than Bill Cosby's dates after their first cocktail. I know, isn't he awful? We all agree, I'm glad. The bottom line, in the old days, our solemn, stately, and benign Republicans, they stayed well-behaved as the left ran rampant. Oh, they would have been shocked by just one win, but typically, they were always just gracious in defeat. John Boehner would have cried, and Paul Ryan would have gone back to his one-man show about Eddie Munster. But Trump is different. He's not just a Republican president, he's a legend. Meaning wherever he goes, the world sits up. Oh, here he comes, they mutter. World leaders scramble for selfies. Politicians come to kiss his ring. And no wonder he's a cross between Godzilla and the Energizer Bunny. And when you're a legend, the story around you does almost all the work for you, especially when the story has a happy ending, as long as you do what Daddy says. Tonight's guest. He's like Elmer's glue. He holds things together and he's white. Fox News contributor Tom Shillue. She reports the news in gin-soaked shoes. Fox News anchor Julie Bandera. He thinks laundromats are a great place to expand his wardrobe. Founder of StudioTSC.com, Michael Loftus. And she's still a distraction despite her contractions. New York Times bestselling author, Fox News contributor Cat Jim. Tom, what do you make of this whole Gaza thing? It's like, we're not putting troops on the ground, but he seems to have just hijacked the conversation, made people think past the sale that he's actually in charge, and that somebody better do something, or I'm gonna just build something.
That's what it is. And when he announced it at the press conference, I almost thought he was just making it up on the spot. And then they went over to Bibi Netanyahu, and I thought he was gonna be like, "What are you talking about?" But he was like, "I think it's a great idea." It's unbelievable. But I love that. The reporter, the Afghan reporter, and after he said, I didn't understand a word you said. I love the way he wrapped it up. Instead of saying, "Could you repeat the question?" He said, "Good luck, live in peace." That's the best answer. Just move on, Yeah. I don't even know I cannot keep up with this presidency. I mean, it's only a couple of weeks in. I feel like it's, that movie, the Keanu Reeves movie where he's driving the bus and he can't stop driving it?
Speed.
Yes.
Love it.
That's what the presidency is. And the Democrats are the villain. And they're like, if you stop the bus, everyone will die. And Trump's like, that's fine. Just plowing through everything. They don't know what to do. The article you sent me today, the New York Times article,
yes.
they're all freaking out. It's written by Maggie Haberman and everybody else. They have so many people on the masthead. And it said that, empowered by Mr. Trump, Mr. Musk is waging a largely unchecked war against the federal bureaucracy. And I'm like, that's the bad part?
Yeah.
It's like they don't know what to do.
I just can't believe that you couldn't remember the name of the movie Speed.
Yeah, that movie.
That's like saying, what's that Scorsese movie about wise guys? Oh, you mean Goodfellas? No, it's about the wise guy.
De Niro's in it.
De Niro, what's that movie about Rocky Balboa? What's it called? You're a screwed up guy. Julie, Tom makes a really good point that, we can't keep up with him, but maybe that's how gets done these days. Do you find it arousing?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm so turned on right now. But you ended your monologue with a happy ending, and then you had my mind going spinning in circles. No, I think he's doing a lot of great things, and I think he's living up to all his promises, which I don't remember the last time that we had a president ever, actually.
Yeah.
Not even in his first term, move this quickly in a matter of 2 weeks. I just want to talk about women and women's sports, transgender women not being allowed, or men, biological male, whatever you want to call that group, to not have to compete in women's sports. I think that's excellent. And that is something that this country really needed. I mean, it's been so unfair. I'm a little bummed about it because I personally was looking forward to trying out for the women's team breakdancing for the next Olympics.
Oh.
But now I'm not going to qualify because, as you know,
Yes.
Adam's apple. Have you noticed it?
Yes. I was not aware.
No.
I was not aware. All right, Loftus, are you upset that you're now banned from competing in women's sports?
I gotta come up with a plan B.
Yes.
It was then I was gonna do the breakdancing thing, but now that's off the table. I am loving every single moment of this presidency. It's like Christmas every day.
Yes.
It's like all we asked Santa for.
Even for Jews.
Right? It's like all we asked for was a wall.
Yeah.
Right? And Trump keeps going, no, check under the tree. I think there's one more under there. The Gulf of America? How did you know? Check under the tree. There's one more under. The Gaza Strip! Oh my God! It's a great idea. It's going to be awesome, but we got to rename it, right? Something confusing like Mississippi North. Just so no one really understands where we're going. But you'll have to throw a stan on the end of it, like Mississippi Northistan, so we can embrace the local culture.
What about you add M-A to Gaza?
Okay.
Magaza.
Magaza.
Gaza.
Magaza stan.
Gaza stand.
You get... Now, if you've got like a homeless problem in LA or Mississippi or Alabama, boop, lift them up, drop them off there. They can open up a Love's truck stop. They can work at the Gaza Strip. We'll have that place rocking and rolling by midnight, baby.
See, Kat, it's like he's opened this conversation up into a whole new world. I don't think it's going to lead to us moving and occupying there. But I feel like he forced everybody's hand.
I don't think it will either, although I'm sure he misses building things, and his nation building would probably be prettier than George W.'s. But I mean, I'm very much a huge non-interventionist, right? I don't want American tax dollars spent on this stuff. I don't want boots on the ground. I also lived through 4 years of Trump before. And I think that what I used to do, I think he just throws stuff out there sometimes. And I think what I maybe did more than once in the last Trump term is I would then react based on that thing. And a lot of times you let time go on. You're like, oh, this isn't going to happen, or was this for some other reason? Because now he's saying he also doesn't want boots on the ground. He also doesn't want American tax dollars spent over there. Now, how it works without those two things, I don't think it does. But he did start this conversation.
It reminds me of the North Korea thing, where the thing we were trying to solve was their desire to drop a missile on us. And so he says, we could build something here, and that didn't happen. But what did happen is he removed the threat from the table. That's what he always goes to. He's like, we'll build it. We'll build it out here. But he did get the threat removed from the table. And that was like the first thing he did, and people forget about that. But I won't forget it, ever.